Hello and welcome. My name is Kerstin Hern and I'm a therapist here at Gaia Woods Psychotherapy. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about my work. I appreciate you. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my niche clientele and specialties. Although I see a range of clients across various identities and mental health conditions and goals, I do have a specialization I'm very passionate about, which is weaving Jungian psychology, depth therapy, and esoteric modalities into my therapeutic work. And this means the crux of our session is me holding space for you, bringing whatever is top of mind that day into session and being present with it. And then as we talk and explore together, and when a certain problem is outlined or a certain thought or behavior is the focus of whatever we're discussing, we can go deeper into that using Jungian psychology and ancient wisdom traditions such as folk magic, earth magic, or the tarot, which are all open practices. And then also based on the client, if you have a cultural, ethnic, or spiritual tradition that's meaningful for you, we can bring that in. But in general, we want to think about creating ritual and ceremony. And this activates the psycho-spiritual and creative forces that are pretty much one and the same. And we know that creativity scientifically helps create neuroplasticity in the brain. It activates this neuroplasticity, which means old carved patterns of behaviors and ways of being can be pruned and essentially lifted and released, and then we can carve new neural pathways with more preferable thoughts and connected emotions and behaviors. And even just to mention, the word psyche in psychology actually means soul. So therapy is essentially soul work, and we're bringing these nonverbal languages of symbols and archetypes and connection with the earth and ancient wisdom into this act of ritual and ceremony. And doing this concretizes positive change in your mind and your physical brain and in your body. And that's where we go into somatic work. So if you think about a flower that keeps wilting and it keeps losing its color, it keeps getting brown petals and dried leaves, one may keep watering it or kind of blasting it with sunlight to try to make it brighter and healthier, but it keeps not growing and it keeps not getting nourished properly. So instead of working at that surface level, what one could do is dig into the soil, into the root, and see that the roots are flooded and kind of rotting. So mental health conditions, relationship issues, and even creative blocks are like this flower. If we can dig into your soul soil, into that darkness, which we can call the shadow in Jungian psychology, into this dirt, you'll eventually get to a root with a lot of information. And this root is the foundation of everything that is built and grows above it into the light. So this is also how you move through the world and how you are in relationship with others. But underneath is so much information that can be used to create insights and make connections that will ultimately empower you, because now you'll understand why you automatically do this or why you compulsively do that. And that's getting into the root there. And usually there's story, there's experience there, and that's where we kind of time travel back into childhood, which is the trope of Freudian psychology and all of that and psychodynamic work, but it's because it's real. There are experiences and relationships that deeply shape us from when we're very young, because we're so malleable and we're just taking in info and we're learning how to be in the world. So it is imperative that we can go back to those stories and then alchemize them and rewrite new ones. And part of this is healing at that root through awareness of these stories, and then the insights we get about them, and then the healing through self-compassion and other tools, the therapeutic relationship. And this insight in all directions creates a healthy exterior, that healthy blooming flower that's in relationship with the world and others. So the other part is depth therapy, or one of the parts is depth therapy, and that's a very collaborative experience that locates these roots and helps them to do a type of soul surgery to nurture them back to health through that exploration and awareness and insight. And in-depth and Jungian work, we don't chop and toss the roots. We're not like, oh, disgusting roots, get out of here. We release what no longer serves back into the soil. And this is integration. It's composting these parts of ourselves, so to speak, which returns us to wholeness. It's integrating everything in. And I believe, and I know many, many other therapists and practitioners believe, that you are not broken. You were never broken. And your soul, your core self, whatever you want to call it, your you is indestructible. Nothing, no one can destroy it. But what happens is it can get kind of layered like shingles over this core light that blocks that core true self from being in charge. And these can show up like unconscious defenses, behaviors, beliefs that affect behaviors, and that are connected to emotions that are really difficult to have. And this is where another modality that I love using that is deeply meaningful across the board with all clients, whether we use it a little bit or a lot, is IFS, or internal family systems. And that's where this can come in, because we can acknowledge and uphold that all humans have many parts that create the whole self. And some of them are born when we're very young, and that's in response to a relationship or an environment that is anywhere from uncomfortable to abusive. So all parts are doing the best they can, and they're all there to protect us or manage others or put out fires. And they work for a while until they don't. And that's where parts work can come in, and where we ensure that you're resourced with safety and grounding tools and exercises, and then explore these parts and get to know them as they naturally emerge through therapy and what we're talking about and what happens between sessions in your life with relationships with others and at work or wherever. And we ask them what they need, and we ask them what they'd like us to know when we're in that root space of exploring kind of the core of where this pattern that we keep doing comes from. And that way we can communicate to these parts that the core self, this light self that's indestructible, is in charge, and that they can take over now. That part can take over now because they appreciate, say, an angry part in someone that gets really defensive when they're communicating with others. And we can send that part compassion because they want us to know they were just trying to protect us from feeling hurt. So now that we understand that part, we can ask them to sort of release the energy around showing up all the time and let them know we're in charge. And this is part of inner child work, because we're asking this young part what it needs. And we ask them to kind of clock out from full-time to part-time, because anger is a sacred emotion and it gives us information. But if we're being constantly angry and hostile and defensive, now we understand why. And we do deeper work as well to see where we learned that. And the idea is that we have this core self in charge now. And this self-communication has been extremely effective in psychotherapy, IFS, and other various forms of what's called parts work, because it's this communication that's also linked to like narrative therapy, where we create the stories we want. We get to know the old stories and then we rewrite our stories. And also having a therapist as a witness and working with you and reflecting deeply impacts the lasting change of that peace, that joy, or whatever the goal is that you want. So for the esoteric part, and Jungian psychology, which are kind of mixed together because Jung was very spiritual. Using Jungian psychology, we can explore and amplify images or themes from anything from a recent dream, a daydream. We can also explore archetypes. There is a list of Jungian archetypes, but there are archetypes everywhere. And in your own culture, family culture, personal world, we can explore and name those archetypes. Also through myth and other stories. And even the tarot is a beautiful way to amplify numerology and imagery around common human themes. And we can see what emerges. And by exploring this content through symbol, you'll connect it to your own stories and engage your unconscious and your shadow, which is a storehouse of parts of ourselves that we banish because they bring us shame, they even disgust us, they cause lack of safety, hurt, or other undesirable emotions. So by bringing what is in the shadow into the light, with awareness being that light, then we can sort of diffuse and transmute that pain or hurt or whatever is connected to that shadow part. And this can be thoughts and beliefs we have about ourselves or others, emotions that come up that are hard to regulate, and then just like, again, actions and behaviors that are associated with that piece we've collected. So by acknowledging it and naming it, we tame it. We take the power away, because now it's not us and who we are, it's this other thing that we pulled in and now it's here. And that's, in the words of Dan Siegel, we name it to tame it. And this takes the power away, like a huge scary shadow on the wall that's terrifying. And then when we actually get closer, we see it's like a baby mouse. So we get to know it like parts work, integrate it, which is returning it to our soul soil, composting it. And if we carry on with the client, the angry client I was just talking about, what came out of the shadow may be a defense mechanism where they automatically start yelling at people and cursing at people when they feel scared. And we identify that it's actually this young part that is terrified of humiliation and gets scared. And so it coats that fear with anger, and that's their defense mechanism. And we explore that root. We learn this angry part was learned in childhood because their caregiver always yelled at them when they were depressed or just about everything. And so they learned and programmed, okay, yelling is what feels safe and normal, and this is like how we are supposed to do things. So that's a snapshot that's very concise. It's much more complex than that, but this is just to give you sort of a vignette. And then bringing in the third part, the esoteric tools, it can be immensely impactful to create ceremony for their inner child and their angry part. I've also done this with clients who have recently come out, and for trans clients, and they wanted to have like a dead name ceremony, which was so beautiful and moving. And so, putting the dead name on paper and burning it, there's so many different ways to do ritual and ceremony. That is one of the most emotionally moving, deep ones that I can remember in recent history. But back to this person with this inner child work, an inner child altar, and this angry part that we don't, again, banish and chop and diminish. We integrate it, we compost it, and we thank it for its work. And it worked until it didn't. And so this altar can be done by using like a photo of yourself if there's a particular age connected to this part, other talismans or objects and symbols that you associate with that part, with your inner child, with anything connected around those memories and that age. And then also offerings like flowers, a sweet treat. We do this a lot in pagan ceremony. Various flowers and herbs and plants have different meanings. Lavender is very healing and protective, and so that's a beautiful one, but also just whatever is naturally around where you live. And then simply fresh water, because water is a powerful element. It nurtures, soothes, heals. When we water things, it helps them grow, and also washes away what no longer serves, so it's cleansing. And so using imagination and creativity, which again brings neuroplasticity in to create new neural pathways, and then the action of building this altar can in itself be extremely healing, just collecting these things and giving them meaning. And fire is the master element. It's the master transmuter. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. So lighting a candle, perhaps a pink candle for compassion and self-love, and then sitting in this space at your altar, meditating on these items, meditating on the ceremony of composting this part, thanking it, and allowing whatever comes up to come up. It's a grief process, it's a rebirth process, so you can free write or free draw and just see what comes out on paper. It's a beautiful exercise for working with your unconscious and integration. Also writing a letter to your inner child, or writing a letter to the angry part to complete this ceremony. So again, this is just one stripped down, simple way, but the important bit here is that each client is unique, as are their experiences. So curating this altar is always going to be very, very personal and unique. And even though clients might do things, a ceremony, every few months for different parts, it's always going to be special and unique. So this was a lot, but I hope you got a snapshot of how depth Jungian and ritual work can work with you in healing and integrating, and even just bringing awareness to unconscious and automatic motivations maybe that are bringing you into therapy, and how they affect your relationships. And a big part of this, the core of all of it, usually is inner child healing, and this is attachment and often family of origin healing. So it's bringing compassion to caregivers and other people. Some people you do not need to give compassion to, but it's giving compassion to yourself as well. It's compassion in all directions. And again, this work would transpire over several sessions, because establishing the safety and the resources while you're regulated is essential. And then we kind of go into the deeper stuff. But once you learn these tools and you engage these new adaptive or nourishing behaviors, you're essentially encoding your brain to remember them and to learn that these are new ways of being when you are regulated, and these are new ways of feeling and thinking about yourself that are more preferable. And that's where that emotional regulation and peace and joy can come with ease. So that is it. Thank you so much for spending time with me. And if you have any questions about any of this, or if you would like to work together, have a free 15-minute consultation, please reach out. And lots of love. Thank you.